A farmer or gardener plants food, then the deer come and eat it. Then the grower starts thinking about fencing. So what does this have to do with a stapler and a piece of paper? This is my tree nursery, and it is a serious fence like a lot of the orchardists have up here. It cost in excess of $1,000 and totally destroyed my budget for all of the other trees I needed to protect. So that's when we started getting creative. Here is the original fence. I needed my baby plants to stay safe in there, and I needed to make sure in the winter the deer couldn't just come and destroy them. There's plenty of food for the deer around here, as you can see. I want them to be well fed, just not in my personal garden. Following the advice of local experts, I used about 2 feet of chicken wire on the bottom that goes out about 2 feet. If a rabbit tries to dig in, they'll hit one of the buried 2 feet of the chicken wire, and smaller animals can't just squeeze through it because the chicken wire is right there. That's followed by welded panel with 2x4 braces, and there's even some electric ribbon on the top. That's not electrified. That's to prevent the deer from jumping in. If we ever did have bear or deer problems, we could absolutely put a solar electrifier on there. Right, so what about the paper and stapler? We're almost there, hang on. For a few of the trees I got in the late season, I just took some tall fence, made a tube out of it, and put that over the tree so the deer couldn't get in to nibble it. That white tube on the bottom of the tree is to protect it from small critters, mostly mice and rabbits. But you'll notice there's a little white piece of paper on some of the sticks. Here it is. This is what we're going to talk about. If you've ever been up in the northern Midwest, you might have seen rows and rows of pine trees with these. Foresters put them on the tips of the white pine trees so the deer don't nibble it off. And now we get to the paper. I was out of fencing and noticed there were deer nibbling at the top of my field where I had more than 100 gooseberry and currant and hostaberry plants. And that we couldn't let happen. So we had to find a solution. The ragged top of this plant is a good sign that deer had nibbled it. I certainly don't cut my plants like that. You excuse the insulation on my hand. I'll have a whole video about that later. But you can see this little piece of paper kept the deer from eating that living tip of the plant. It's still there. I pulled the sleeve up just a little bit, but all winter I left the tip of that plant hanging out so that in the spring it could grow if I didn't get it to remove the paper. Up here, these are black currants, and you can see I left the very tip of that plant out. It's doing great, still alive, deer haven't nibbled it. That's the fence on the ground. I tried that cheap plastic fence up here in the high wind area. It absolutely did not work. And here's a gooseberry, and you can tell that the deer haven't nibbled on any part of that plant. So I'm not sure if it's because of the paper around it or if the deer didn't prefer that, but there are a bunch of nipped tops before the snow fell. So here it is up close, folded piece of paper about the size of an index card. I put 2 staples in the top, went under a little side branch and put a staple on the bottom. Be sure to leave that tip open so if you don't get to them to remove them before they start growing, the tip can start growing just fine. By them I mean the paper. So you don't want to trap or break that tip of the plant in the paper. And there you can see the bottom staple, and that's really all it took. It was getting dark. I put on a headlamp, went out and did all 100 of these in about 20-30 minutes. So given that it was materials on hand, it worked very well. Next, I just checked the bottom of the plant, make sure it hadn't been nibbled by rodents, and it's actually looking very good. So what do you think? When do you think you would have to use a big expensive fence, and when do you think you could get away with using just paper over the growing tips? That tiny little knob is my drip irrigator. Thanks for listening, and check out more growing and farming videos on my channel.